The supreme, profound, and sublime Dharma is difficult to encounter in a billion eons. Now I see it, hear it, receive it, and kept it. I vow to attain the true meaning of the Tathagata. In order to liberate all sentient beings, let us generate the supreme bodhicitta. Let us continue with our class on A Journey to the West. Today we're going to cover the topic on the foundation of Dharma practice. In the morning of June the 19th, His Holiness gave empowerment of his own terma, the cycle of peaceful manjushri. That is his own mind terma, the one that he reviewed in Mount Wutai. Today, you're also receiving empowerment, so that's really wonderful. I think, let it be today and tomorrow you'll be receiving empowerment, and I think this kind of auspicious coincidence is really wonderful. On that day, Ponso Rinpoche was giving the audience this empowerment to the audience gathered in the temple, including people affiliated with the temple and those from other places. Before the empowerment, His Holiness addressed them with the following words. He said that before receiving the empowerment, you should reflect like this. In order to benefit all sentient beings throughout the reach of space, I will listen carefully and spread this practice in the future. Here, I give you permission to translate this teaching into any language and spread and propagate it everywhere across the world by any means. Now that there are different languages, including English, German, and Nepali, and I think whenever we have an opportunity, it can be translated into Japanese, Korean, and Mongolian, and so on and so forth, because many people over here speak other languages. Ponso Rinpoche, with his aspiration and his permission to translate this particular teaching into different languages, and encouraged us to try to propagate this teaching to different countries in this world. This particular terma is just like listening through liberation through listening by Karma Limpa, or the Tibetan book of dying. It is considered as one of the most profound teachings within Mahaati, and it will be benefiting lots of sentient beings in this dark age. After Ponso Rinpoche, in fact, after Ponso Rinpoche reviewed this Dharma at Mount Wutai, he also gave us the permission to translate it into Chinese language. That is why I had also spoken and talked about the teaching of the peaceful manjushri teachings. Now that you have received it, each one of you have the responsibility to spread this Dharma teaching as well. Khenpo Namdrol, in fact, spreading the Dharma is the duty-bound responsibility for every one of you. Take Khenpo Namdrol as an example. He not only teaches the Dharma extensively to the Tibetan monastics in India, but also tries to promote this practice in places like Taiwan and Hong Kong. In fact, I know Khenpo Namdrol kept on practicing it after receiving this. He has a great devotion and faith to this particular terma. His activity of disseminating the Dharma and benefiting sentient beings are deep and vast. Ponso Rinpoche then continued to say that I believe you must also have such ability, and I hope you can propagate this practice on a large scale and in profound way. The main training of Mahayana Buddhism is to cultivate the vast altruistic intention to help all sentient beings. So please do not think it is not your business to carry forward this teaching. Nobody should neglect this sacred mission. In terms terms of shouldering this mission, well, over here, Ponsok Rinpoche specifically pointed out and give us the permission to propagate this teaching. On top of that, he said that I also had set a good example for you. He has been disseminated this teaching to a great number of lay practitioners and monastics in mainland of China. In fact, back then, I believe around that time, before 1993, I think we started having more Han Chinese coming into Larangar, beginning from maybe 1987 and more around 1991. So he pointed out that you should all remember to contribute your effort to spread this practice on various occasions. The empowerment was finished in the morning, and following that, Ponsok Rinpoche gave 2 lectures on placing Buddhahood within reach, the practice manual of the peaceful monastery. One was in the afternoon and the other the next day. The first lecture covered the part from the beginning stanza to Generation Bodhicitta. I did not record that teaching completely and just exerted a part to share with you. Ponsok Rinpoche gave the teaching, used 2 days to give the teachings on placing the Buddha within reach. And then in total, when Ponsok Rinpoche was given teachings in the United States, he taught on it for 5 times. And the Westerners really was very much interested in it, because after Ponsok Rinpoche reviewed this Dharma at Mount Wutai, he first went to India, and then in 1990 he gave this teaching and empowerments to many great masters, including Ryokintse Rinpoche and Pinno Rinpoche, and many great masters had received it. Once that news spread to the West, everyone really wished to receive this teaching. So Ponsok Rinpoche, in his schedules, a majority of the teaching requests were on his own termas, including the Purba teachings and peaceful monastery teachings. So out of the 10 Dharma centers that Ponsok Rinpoche went to, he gave the teachings in 5 out of those 10. In the rest of the centers, he also read the oral transmissions as well. So this teaching was very popular at that time, very well known and renowned. And at the 5th stop, when Ponsok Rinpoche was giving the teachings at the Paoyu Center in Washington, D.C., Ponsok Rinpoche had given the complete Dharma teaching on the peaceful monastery and placing Buddha within hand. So that part of the Vajrayana teaching had already been taught entirely at that stop, at that particular place. And that can be shared to you later after you receive the empowerment. Ponsok Rinpoche, after bestowed the empowerment, he said that, as mentioned earlier, when listening to this teaching, you should think, I am here to listen to this exquisitely profound teaching and practice its meaning for the purpose of placing all sentient beings throughout the reach of space in Buddhahood. So first of all, you have to generate bodhicitta. Please cultivate this intention before receiving the teachings. The teachings you're going to receive is placing Buddha within reach, which provides step-by-step instruction for practicing the peaceful monastery. If you want to actually follow this path, there are 2 kinds of instructions. The first part is the overall explanation of the stages of the path, and the second part is the specific pith instructions for actual practice. As for the first, I have elaborated on all the stages in the text entitled Heart Essence Bindu of the Heart, which is a text that complements the peaceful monastery. You can say that it's a set of teaching. It complements each other in terms of the theory, because the heart essence bindu of the heart specifically elaborates on the step-by-step practice, and the placing the Buddhahood within reach is rather a practice pith instruction. That is why these two truly complement each other. The second, the pith instructions of the actual practice are elucidated in the practice manual, placing Buddhahood within reach. Speaking of these two texts, the Heart Essence Bindu of the Heart follows the extensive Pandita's approach, while the placing Buddhahood within reach follows the profound Kusali's approach. In fact, the Heart Essence Bindu, since it follows the extensive Pandita's approach that is similar to the Seven Treasures of Longchen Rabjam, but the Heart Essence Bindu has only over 30 stanzas compared to that of the Seven Treasures. But out of the two approaches, in terms of the actual practice, you can follow the guidance of either of these two texts because both of them provide a complete and accurate path to perfect Buddhahood. This time, I'm going to focus on placing Buddhahood within reach. And before that, I would like to supplement it with some teachings from the Heart Essence Bindu of the Heart. In fact, Ponsokren Buche kept on talking about the Heart Essence Bindu of the Heart. He kept on saying that this is a really wonderful teaching. For example, it talks about how one should be contented with whatever they have and not to have more greed. Also, on top of that, talks about how one should generate faith and engage in practice and so on. Also relying on a spiritual teacher and preserve pure precepts. For that reason, it really is a necessary Dharma teaching to study before the practice of actual peaceful manjushri. Because in the peaceful manjushri, he did not speak of those basics. Rather, the Heart Bindu speaks of that. That is why they are of good complementary to each other. A prerequisite for practicing pure Dharma is to have less desire and to be content. Specifically, to have less desire means to never think, if only I could acquire what he or she has when seeing someone who possesses abundant wealth, distinguished power and influence and good reputation. Contentment. So the previous part is to have less desire, and this this part talks about contentment. Contentment means to always be satisfied with a sense of contentment, to think that this is good enough, regardless of whether you enjoy nice food and drink or not. A content person will never insatiably engage in meaningless, mundane projects for a pursuit of better material enjoyments. Well, compared to the Western cultures, when we speak of contentment and have less desire, I wasn't sure if they would be able to accept it at the time, because the teachings within Buddhism is completely different than the Western culture. For example, they would seek for all kinds of things, but it seems that when Ponsokren Rinpoche was giving the teaching, they really felt that his teaching was very much meaningful. Ponsokren Rinpoche continued to say that if you're a person with less desire and contentment, you will not cling to the glory, reputation, achievement of this life. Otherwise, you will be blindly hold on to this world and lose the chance to practice the pure Dharma. No matter how much pleasurable enjoyment you experience, it only increases your desire and will never satisfy you. For instance, when somebody gets a pound of gold, he would want 2 pounds, and when one becomes the owner of one region, he would like to gain 2 regions. When a person is elected as the leader of a country, he wanted to sovereign 2 countries. The pit of desire can never be filled. Therefore, we must learn to decrease desire. No matter how much energy we spend on worldly pursuit, Even if you devote your entire life, there will never be an end to it. For the majority of people throughout their life, they chase after happiness, wealth, and fame. For that goal, they have to put in limitless effort every day, but the reward is usually insignificant, and suddenly they find that their life has reached its end. Considering this, it is more than wise to give up all kinds of worldly engagements and get involved only in accomplishing everlasting peace and happiness. Well, the way that Phuntsho Rinpoche explained and taught in the West is completely different, because when he was giving teachings in Laronggar, he usually would teach on, for example, preserve the precepts, and would speak more of the quotations from sutras and tantras and so on. But over here, he simply adopted a more Western way, or a way that suited better for the Western audience. Now, think about happiness, wealth, or fame in this world. Aren't they just like what happened in a dream? Suppose we dream of doing business. Sometimes we're happy regarding a profit, and sometimes we are depressed about a loss. But this is just a dream. We have never even done any business in this dream. How then can there be benefit or loss? Similarly, happiness, possession, reputation in this world do not truly exist and are not different from appearances in a dream. So think about your own life all the way from birth till now. Some of you have a wonderful life so far, and some have suffered tremendously, while others have mixed feelings about their life. However, all of these are no different from a dream of last night. Besides memories, the pleasure and misfortunes that once happened will no longer be experienced. It doesn't really matter you experience a happiness or suffering. Doesn't matter you are joyful because of the happiness you experience in the dream, or distress by misfortune in the dream. When you wake up in the next morning, nothing really happened. Similarly, the happiness and suffering we experience today, however vivid they may be, will not exist by the next dawn. Our current emotions are as insubstantial as a dream. In the same way, the emotions of tomorrow and the day after tomorrow are no different from those in the dream of tomorrow and the dream after tomorrow. This is exactly what Longchenpa had stated in the Resting in Illusion. All the dreams are just simply illusions. Everything that happens are just simply dreams, and you cannot attain anything substantial. In fact, all of those dreams are not everlasting or solid, since the experience of suffering and happiness have never truly existed and are based on delusion. There is no reason to be attached to them. However you are, once you decided to practice genuine Dharma, you need to train yourself to become content, desireless, and maintain the mindset, as long as I do not feel cold or hungry, all is good. Otherwise, if you spend lots of energy on worldly things, you will never be able to practice the sacred Dharma. In fact, back then, the Westerners did not spend much time on practice because they're very busy with the secular duties. However, they put down all the other duties and just came to listen to the Dharma teachings given by Phuntsho Rinpoche, as the other day we had already learned from the host. On one hand, I think indeed the Westerners couldn't let go of their secular enjoyments, just like how people nowadays in the larger urban cities as well. So Phuntsho Rinpoche over here stated that as long as you have some food to eat and some clothes to wear, that's good. Despite that, I think nowadays it is very difficult to even sustain that kind of level or that kind of quality of life in large cities nowadays. So all of you who stays in this valley, you should be content and desireless, because you still have that kind of level of that standard of livelihood. nowadays, due to the decline of economic situation all over the world, people all over the world are very much worried about livelihood. And compared to those people, I think as a practitioner, we can consider ourselves as being really happy, because as a monastic, we won't die from hunger or starvation. So Pontsukul Rinpoche over here states that as long as I don't feel cold or hungry, all is good. Otherwise, if you spend lots of energy on worldly things, you would never be able to practice the sacred Dharma. So we should be satisfied as long as we have enough food and clothes. Even if we had become the king of the world, besides clothes, food, transportation, and living environment that are needed for daily use, we would never be able to enjoy everything we possess. Therefore, too much wealth, enjoyment, fame, and glory will not do you any good. In terms of spiritual practice, the best case is to focus only on the practice of Dharma and never get involved in worldly and trivial things. One who can accomplish that is considered as superior or supreme practitioner. If you cannot totally give up worldly pursuit and you practice the Dharma, but also seek glory and wealth of this life, you can only be counted as a middling practitioner. If you eagerly chase after happiness and glory of this life, yet have some interest in the Dharma, you are inferior practitioner. In the worst case, if you only desire for the peace and wealth of this life, but have no wish to practice Dharma at all, you will never become a practitioner or a Buddhist. So Pontsukul Rinpoche spoke of these 4 types of practitioners. I think all of you should make observation of your own mind stream. Maybe you can't be even considered as a practitioner before, but now you're becoming an inferior practitioner, and maybe then becoming a middling practitioner through various means, and slowly you can become a supreme practitioner that does not grasp onto anything for this lifetime. Pontsukul Rinpoche says that, therefore, please examine your own mind according to what I said, and see if you were not a practitioner at all in the past. You need to start now to first become an inferior practitioner at least. If you were an inferior practitioner, you should do everything possible to reach the level of a middling one. If you were a middling practitioner, then stretch a little bit more to see if you can turn into a supreme practitioner who has no desire for this life at all. Pontsukul Rinpoche's requirement is stated as above. And then the next part talks about relying on the teacher. On top of having less desire and more contentment, one should rely on a teacher. For anyone who genuinely wants to follow the spiritual path to enlightenment, initially you should develop less desire and be more content. With those qualities as the basis, you need to rely on a qualified teacher. Why is that? Because we need to follow the instructions of a teacher to get rid of all our faults and go against the Dharma and cultivate every potential quality that we do not have in our mind. What are the criteria for a qualified teacher whom we can rely on? According to Buddhist terminology, a teacher must possess a certain uncommon characteristics that distinguish him or her from the ordinary people. We should follow a teacher who meets the required qualifications and has abundant merit and virtue. The first requirement and the most basic requirement is that he or she must possess loving kindness, the wish for all sentient beings to have happiness and compassion, the wish for all sentient beings to be free from suffering. Loving kindness and compassion are the most fundamental qualities a teacher should have. And on that basis, the teacher must also be able to explain the meaning of Dharma. Only when all these criteria are met can a person be called a qualified teacher. Now, Pontsukul Rinpoche give rather a different terminology, or use a different terminology to explain the characteristics characteristics of a lama or of a teacher, because he did not give the highest requirement that is taught within the Vajrayana, the 9 types of criteria of a lama. For example, the teachings one should be well versed in all the teachings of Buddhism, and one should preserve pure precepts and completely proficient in giving teachings of the 5 treatises and so on and so forth. So Phuntsok Rinpoche rather give the lowest requirements, present the lowest requirement, or most basic requirement rather. And then he continued to say then, now what are the ways that a disciple should rely on a teacher then? The supreme way is to practice the Dharma received from the teacher. The middling way is wholeheartedly attend to the teachers so he or she is pleased. The inferior way is to make material offerings to the teacher to please him or her and to repay him or her kindness. These are the 3 ways of pleasing the teachers that a student must do when following a teacher. As a disciple, you should request and receive teachings from teacher. There are different kinds of schools. For example, there are 8 different schools within the Tibetan tradition: Nyingma, Gyaltsen, Kagyu, Shakya, and Jonam, and the other branch schools as well, and receive Dharma teachings from the 2 supremes and 6 ornaments. The disciple should try their best to receive those teachings from their teacher. The best teachings are the sutras directly taught by the Buddha and the Shastras that interpret the intended meaning of the sutras composed by either great Indian masters such as the 2 supreme ones and the 6 ornaments, or by Tibetan accomplished masters and scholars such as those of the 8 lineages of attainment in the lands of snows. It is important that we receive these teachings directly from the teacher. Of course, the spiritual path is not just about receiving teachings from the teacher. It is not right if you just listen to a teacher before the Dharma throw and then put it aside. You should memorize all the words and their meanings by heart. If you are unable to grasp all the teachings, you should at least master the one that you are going to practice. Take the profound, peaceful manjushri, placing Buddhahood within reach. After listening to the explanation of the entire text from the teacher, you must remove any doubt or confusion about the words and their meaning. Otherwise, if you merely read it by yourself in an absent-minded manner and try to discern the meaning through your dualistic mind, you will never understand the deeper meaning. This is especially the case for Vajrayana practice. Even if you know the words inside and out, you will not comprehend the secret meaning behind the words nor the Pith instructions for practicing, because they're not explicitly written in the text and can only be revealed by qualified teachers. Considering this, make sure you rely on a qualified teacher. In general, due to a different faculty and afflictive emotions of the recipients, different ways to teach the Dharma have to be adopted. If only one way of teaching is employed, it would be like prescribing the same medicine to all patients, in which case most patients would not be cured. And worse still, it is likely to cause more suffering to them. However, placing Buddhahood within reach is not the usual case. Whoever practices this menu wholeheartedly will benefit themselves immediately. In Tibetan medicine, Myrobalan is effective to dispel all 404 kinds of diseases. This is a special Tibetan medicine. When making a prescription, if the doctor uses Myrobalan as the main ingredients and supplements it with various other medicines according to health situation of the individual patient, the prescription may produce instant results. In the same way, placing Buddhahood within reach is as universally effective as Myrobalan. If a teacher imparts it to disciples, he or she should base the teachings on this practice manual and also add some Pith instructions to supplement it. Otherwise, merely relying on one single teaching, it would be hard to place everyone in the state of Buddhahood. Now, magic power at noon of June the 19th, Kyabje Rinpoche, Yijin Norbu, that is Pontsuk Rinpoche, sat on the lawn close to the shrine room enjoying the beautiful scenery. Amazingly, a group of visitors who came together, they were a group of visitors with the brown hair and pale eyes. Also, another group with golden hair, blue eyes, and black hair and brown eyes. Pontsuk Rinpoche over here said that, well, the group of people who came to me, Pontsuk Rinpoche said to them, what an auspicious occasion, you brown-haired people from North America, you golden-haired people from South America, and a black-haired old Asian man could gather together in this way. That refers to himself. Following that, he gave a spontaneous talk about the value of human life. Finally, all these 100 people took refuge in the Three Jewels. In the afternoon, the active volcano known as Kilauea in the southern part of this island of Hawaii began erupting. Some local people were in panic and came to His Holiness for blessings. He said to the people around him, more than 1,000 years ago, conflagration in Mount Hipori at Samye in central Tibet was extinguished by Nanam Dorje Dudrum through his clairvoyance. Now, since I have the same name as being the reincarnation of him, may I be able to put this fire out. Pontsuk Rinpoche took out his purba. His purba usually is tied around his waist. Sometimes his purba would be taken out or put away during passing the customs and so on. But that particular purba was said to belong to Lirab Limpa. And then he chanted a sacred mantra while abiding in a meditative state. Soon afterwards, we were told that the volcano became quiet. On the second day, some geologists purposely called on Rinpoche and expressed their gratitude. They praised him from the depth of their hearts, saying that the might of Tibetan Buddhism and your blessings are truly unbelievable. The resident Lama at Nechon Dorje, Dryan Ling, told me that the story was featured in the local news. And then I was told later by Lama Lobsang, because Lama Lobsang was a very good host and he was very aware of the local situation. Now let us stop here today.
Sonamanda ye tamchida zubanya tomna ni be jana pamshe kirgana ji ralong chuba ye chabam sonen jova jorvara jo